The Ain't No Fang podcast. From Arizona Sports, Ain't No Fang.
Welcome into Ain't No Fang, Arizona Sports' Diamondbacks podcast, our first regular season show, as it was a pretty eventful weekend over at Chase Field. And here to help break it down with me is Kellan Olson, who did some double duty going from Chase Field over to PHX Arena last night. Kellan, how's it going?
What's up, man?
Awesome. I mean, this is a weekend that obviously we were looking forward to forever. Opening weekend, how would they come out? Would it be fireworks like last year? And it was looking a little bit down with how they were playing, the results, until the 8th inning of the 4th game on Sunday. The Diamondbacks come back 8 runs in the 8th inning, storm back from down 6-2 to win 10-6. And with that, they split the series against Chicago. They get today off, and then they will go to the Bronx for 3 games against the New York Yankees. And so I guess to kind of start off with it, it's just like you lose 2 of the first 3 in a series where you don't play particularly sharp defensively where we expect them to. Missing opportunities with some runners on base. Maybe the pitching in all facets wasn't as sharp as we'd like to see it, especially on opening day. But then they come back and they have this huge answer backs victory, this avalanche of offense that we saw from them a handful of times last year. And so how does that kind of change the perception of what the opening weekend was like for Diamondbacks baseball as they reintroduce themselves?
Yeah, just a lot, especially going into the series on Tuesday. I know that everyone is excited about Corbin Burnes, rightfully so, but with the way the Yankees are swinging with these Looney Tunes bats, you were wondering, oh boy, if they drop 3 or 4 like that to start the year, and then go into New York, where the biggest example, the largest outcome I'm trying to say, Alex, is the Yankees have found this edge for a couple of weeks before everyone is using these bats all of a sudden, or it's just this flash in the pan thing. We'll see, but it's certainly working for them. So you look at what happened for them over the weekend and what happened for the D-backs, and you were just wondering if they were going to get off to this kind of terrible start, to be honest. But they really showed some life in kind of the way that we expected, just a myriad of ways offensively. It wasn't just a line of homers. It was a little bit of everything that they did. It included some very nice, you talk about execution and not doing the little things well. The double steal was one thing where that's perfect D-backs baseball right there. That was one of the first moments of the entire season where it felt like that was Diamondbacks baseball, just getting a leg up by executing at a high level. And then just getting the pop where they did. Josh Naylor was fantastic this weekend. I thought that performance from him was was a sign of good faith for people like me who are still incredibly anxious that Christian Walker is no longer a Diamondback, because when we were looking up the numbers during the game when we were sitting next to each other, it was 3 walks. He got on 5 times. And the leader in 3-walk games last year was Christian Walker. He had 3. So that's the type of thing where you look at him in the middle of the order. You look at Lourdes homering to tie the game. Gino, as you mentioned to me before we went on the air, just won National League Player of the Week, I believe is the correct phrasing there. Yeah. So the pop in the middle of the order over the weekend was really something offensively that we wanted to see, Alex, and I was glad to see it come to fruition to win a game like that.
Yeah, so to kind of go over the events, just to kind of break it down step by step, because it is kind of amazing to watch when these innings do happen and how they start to unfold. It started with a couple walks, right? So Alek Thomas and Corbin Carroll work walks against Caleb Thielbar, left-handed pitcher with the Cubs, to get this thing rolling. And the Cubs go to Eli Morgan out of the pen, a right-hander, who had, I've got to imagine, just about one of the worst outings in relief that a pitcher has had in recent memory, because, and we'll kind of get over probably the most embarrassing moment for him, but for the Diamondbacks, they just kept it rolling. Ketel Marte flew out, but then Perdomo laces a double into the gap. You mentioned Gurriel with the big home run after he, not a great weekend overall for Gurriel, but he did hit a couple balls hard before the home run, so it felt like he was starting to see it a little bit better. Boom, huge moment for him. And then Gabby Moreno with, what's going to be kind of an overlooked at bat in all of this, a really good at bat, and just pokes a single over to right field. And it basically starts this whole new rally, because Josh Naylor comes up, has his biggest moment as a Diamondback with a double off the wall. And then there's this kind of awkward moment, right? Because they intentionally walk Eugenio Suarez, 1 out, 2 on, and the Diamondbacks are out of players. So they got to go to Ryan Nelson, relief pitcher Ryan Nelson, to hit in this situation. We saw it last year, almost to the day when they played the Yankees, because they had a situation where Geraldo Perdomo got hurt in that game and they were out of position players. They had to use up the DH spot to get somebody back in the field. And because of that, you ended up with Scott McGough with the game on the line in the 11th inning against the Yankees. And he ends up striking out after almost stealing a single down the right field line, but it was foul. So fast forward to now this year, they started Ketel Marte at DH. They have Garrett Hampson at second base. They just want to get Ketel off his feet. They're looking for an offensive spark plug. And so Torrey starts to wheel and deal a little bit, knowing that he was taking a risk by getting rid of his DH spot. He pinch hits for Hampson. Ketel has to go in the field. They no longer have the DH. And as they continue putting bench guys in the game to pinch hit, they eventually run out of position players. And so you end up with the situation where Ryan Nelson, who had been lobbying to Torrey Labello, if that spot ever comes up again that McGough had, I'm your guy.
He wants to know about Nelly. He's been talking smack for 2 years now about what he's able to do. He told me that McGough last year, around the same time, basically the same situation. I knew that I was really rolling the dice there, pinch hitting and inserting people the way I did, but we were just flat. We were flatlined. I was looking for anything, and Peyton got the big hit. So it did work out. But at the end of it, I told Nelly, and 2 innings before, I called down and said, hey, I'm projecting you to hit in the 9th, most likely the 10th inning. Why don't you come on down here and take some swings? So he's been assuring me since the McGough at-bat against the Yankees last year that he would do a better job. And I could tell by the first couple takes that he was going to be just fine. So ran the bases, had a slide, did the old, I don't know why they're shooting baskets out there, but he partook. He got into it. And those are great moments for the team.
Yeah, I've been in his ear for a little over a year now, and telling him that if that situation ever came up, I told him I was going to hit a missile somewhere, but we'll take that.
Yeah. What was your thought when the barrel actually connected?
I thought that pitch was right down the middle, and then I looked at it and it was not even in the zone. So I think, yeah, just trying to put the bat on the ball. Once they got to second and third, I was like, all right, man, I kind of have a job to do now. Like, it's not just like for fun anymore. There's some runs to drive in. So just try to get the foot down and put the bat on the ball.
He hit in college. He was a shortstop at Oregon. So it's not like he's had no experience hitting. Like, pretty decent pitching, but obviously that was back in 2018 and he wasn't a particularly good hitter at Oregon. So he comes up, you mentioned the double steal, executed perfectly. Josh Naylor gets this huge lead off of second base. He's reading Eli Morgan, who was on Cleveland with him. So he knows this pitcher and his tendencies, steals third base. Suarez follows him to second. And then Nelly just puts the barrel on the ball, pitch outside, pokes it up the middle. And it's one of the craziest moments that I've seen at Chase Field since starting to cover the team, because he's the first pitcher since they implemented the universal DH in 2022 to record a hit. And that makes sense, right? Because why would pitchers ever be in the game to hit at all now that there's a universal DH? But there's this awkward moment where it happens and it was magical, right?
I did a press box no, Alex. I vocally, I was audible. I don't even remember what I said. I think I just said oh my God. But I said something next to you. I don't remember what I said exactly. But it was crazy. And it was just a beautiful moment. We see a lot in different sports where momentum is building to a moment. And then you just kind of expect it to fizzle most of the time. We saw that in the NCAA tournament the last 2 weeks where games were getting close and then we got nothing. But you never expect him to. I didn't expect him to make contact or swing. And then Torrey, of course, when we were asking him after the game, revealing that the message to Nelson was to swing away regardless, which is crazy because if he hits a double play ball, the inning is over. You have a real hitter behind him. Mm-hmm. But who knew? Ryan Nelson is a real hitter, Alex. He is indeed. Yeah,
he's a 1,000 hitter now. First career at bat, first career hit, and he got the ball after the game, which is amazing because that's not something I thought about in the moment. It's oh yeah, they got to keep the baseball for his first career hit that you see with prospects who come up all the time, and it's this is his moment. Yeah, you mentioned have him swing away. They didn't want him to bunt just because it's not something he's done in a long time. Granted, he's not swung a bat in a real game in a long time either, but they just felt like it was a little bit too much to ask him to square around with the pitcher throwing hard. It's I don't really want to put him in that situation. So we're going to have him swing and, fingers crossed, hope for the best. If he strikes out, whatever. So it was a pretty cool moment. It was the first time a full-time pitcher. So obviously Shohei Ohtani gets thrown out the window in all of this stuff because he breaks every single one of these parameters. First full-time pitcher to record a hit in a major league game since Zach Greinke did so in the 2001 World Series with the Houston Astros. And he's the first Diamondbacks pitcher to do it since Zach Gallen in the second to last game of the regular season back in 2021. So it's been a while since we've had a pitchers who rake kind of a moment, but it was a cool moment for him, and it was a cool moment for the team to kind of rally behind, this thing that you don't get to see every day. And then we saw them continue with it because Alek Thomas falls with a hit and Nelson gets the score. And then Corbin Carroll falls with a double and Thomas gets the score. So it's just one after another. It starts with really good at-bats and good discipline. And then we've just seen them be able to do this. And so when you look at the weekend as a whole, it probably was not an optimal weekend for how the Diamondbacks played because defensively we expect them to be really good. And they weren't really good defensively this weekend. The base running and the athleticism and the speed, we expect that to be a significant advantage over other teams. And the Cubs kind of used that to their advantage against the Diamondbacks throughout much of the weekend, especially in the third game and in the first game when the Cubs won. I mean, it was a base running mistake at the end of the third game by Garrett Hampson getting too far off of third base, and a great defensive play by Dansby Swanson that ended that game. And that's kind of the thing that we're looking for with the Diamondbacks, taking advantage of other teams. And so going into the bottom of the eighth inning, it was like, you're right. It's like, I don't know. This team has to play a lot cleaner than it has been if it's going to win on the margins. And who knows what they'll do in Yankee Stadium. But in order to kind of build off of something like this and get some momentum going into that, I think it's a pretty big deal. And so it was a nice way to end the weekend. But overall, this team is going to have to play a lot better. But it is only one series at the end of the day, right?
To stay positive, I'm looking at the numbers right now, Alex. 15 doubles in 4 games, which is just not sustainable at all, of course. But we were talking about like the slug and how the Diamondbacks can make up for it. 5 homers over these 4 games, but again, 15 doubles, 3 for Pavin Smith in 7 at-bats. Ketel with 2. Same for Corbin, Grichuk, Naylor, and Alek Thomas, and then 1 for Gurriel and Perdomo. And I wanted to bring that up because Alek Thomas, 5 for 7 in these 2 games, and that one of those 2 outs was a homer in 13 out of 30 parks
I thought it was
in
gone.
Baseball.
I thought it was gone.
I did as well. It was a very, we've all watched baseball long enough. I'm sure people on the broadcast as well, when they were watching from home, thought the same thing. And then Pavin was 4 for 7 in these games as well, with 3 of those 4 hits being doubles. So again, with Naylor, with Smith, with Thomas, I asked you the question, right when the game was wrapping up, Alek has to be starting on Tuesday, right? You got to feed the hot hand here in center.
We'll see. I don't know. They're kind of divvying up the playing time in center field with McCarthy and Thomas, but Thomas has looked really good to start the year after, we watched spring training, and you take away what you take away from spring training. With him, it was like, okay, physically, he looks good. He's running down these balls. He's chasing them. He's going back to the wall really well. But offensively, he was kind of pounding a lot into the ground throughout spring training. I think he hit below 200 in spring training, but Cactus League is what it is. You take with it what you take with it. And for him to start the season, he's driving the ball in the air. He's splitting gaps. He's getting on base. It's been a really promising start for him. While McCarthy has started off a little bit slow. It's only one series, so I don't know if you take that and change your plans significantly. But yeah, if you're going to ride the hot hand, Alek Thomas is certainly somebody you could do that with. And you also have Corbin Burnes making his first start if you want the best defensive alignment behind him, potentially. And then Alek Thomas gives you that edge in center field as well. And whether or not the Yankees are starting a right-hander, do you want to mix and match a little bit, get Lourdes off his feet and put your 3 lefty outfilders out there? I don't know. We'll see exactly what they want to do with that. But it has been pretty promising that Alek Thomas has started off the way that he has. And to your point about the doubles, I think this is going to be a pretty high doubles team. Right, because you're replacing Jock with Pavin, and Jock hit over. He's hit over 20 home runs a lot in his career. I think Pavin is going to be more of a doubles hitter for them. And with Walker, you can kind of pencil him in for 30 home runs every year as a right-handed hitter hitting in that ballpark. As a lefty, it's a little bit tougher to do that. And Naylor has shown maybe a little bit more of a tendency in his career to hit more doubles, especially 2 years ago when he hit over 300. So I think that this is going to be a team that's going to hit a lot of doubles. They're going to have to work their at-bats, get people on base, and then come through in the big moments. And, it was kind of evading them for much of the game, but they were able to do it. And Naylor was a huge reason why. That's a heck of a way to introduce yourself in the first series of the season. And, he's a really interesting character in this whole thing.
15 doubles again. That's in 4 games. The next highest team in terms of the teams that have only played 4 games, so excluding the Cubs and the Dodgers, is 9. The Padres had 9 doubles, and then even the Cubs had 11. The Dodgers had 9. So they are far and away the leaders through the opening weekend in that number. Where do you want to start first in terms of pitching and defense?
Yeah, we could start with the pitching, I suppose. It was kind of an up and down weekend for Diamondbacks pitchers. I would say the starters, for the most part, were pretty good. It was not the start you wanted from Zach Gallen on opening day. A lot was made out of him getting the opening day start over Corbin Burns and what that meant as far as pushing Corbin back out of the opening series of the season. And it looked like a start that we saw a few times from him last year where it just wasn't quite sharp. There was one inning that really got away from him in terms of command. He threw 11 straight balls. He kind of battled to limit some damage later, but 4 innings and 4 runs is not entirely what you would have wanted out of him when you reward him with the opening day start. Ryan Nelson comes in. He gets hit a little bit hard, but I also think his stat line is pretty unfortunate because there were some defensive miscues behind him. And then you get some decent bullpen work. And then in the other 3 games, I thought Merrill Kelly really battled, got out of some trouble early, and then really started to cruise in that game. 5 1/3, 1 earned run for him. Brandon Pfaadt, it looked like a pretty good start until he gave up a 2-run home run late, which kind of reminiscent of last year when we saw from Brandon in terms of, got out of some trouble early, really hit and got into cruise control, was really efficient, was really good. And then just one pitch kind of costs him, and towards the end of his outing, that makes the stat line look maybe not as good as how we actually saw him pitch. I thought it was a pretty good start for Brandon after his extension. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, I thought was fantastic for most of the game. But again, it was, a leadoff walk and then maybe 1 too many changeups and 1 lurking a little bit too far over the plate to Seiya Suzuki, who hit it out. So again, I think when you look at Pfaadt and Rodriguez, I thought both had really excellent starts, but maybe the stats don't look as good as what we were watching with our eyes.
Yeah, from the eye test perspective, I thought Erod had the best outing of the 4 guys so far, and that was my biggest takeaway so far from the starters, just because it's a really, really big year for him. Last year, you can just throw it away. It's injuries, whatever. But if he has another throwaway year, then you're looking at the last 2 years of that contract for a total of $40 million. And this is not a team, while they spent big on Corbin Burns, they are not a franchise that is positioned to take on contract albatrosses, which is what they have to do this year anyway with the Jordan Montgomery news. The other thing I was looking at is 5 scoreless innings for the big 4. Ginkel out, of course. But Thompson, Puck, and Martinez. Got a little dicey there for AJ yesterday, I guess, if you want to frame it that way. But he handled business, and so did Martinez and Thompson as well. And I remarked to you in the press box, while Ryan Thompson was in, I was like, I miss good Ryan Thompson. This is nice to have good Ryan Thompson back, because it's just you could. I'm sure a lot of people, when they have their baseball games on, throughout the season, sometimes they'll go get something done in the house during a half inning or whatever. And if you go do the dishes while Ryan Thompson is in, you're probably just going to miss the half inning, because he gets done in 3 minutes, just in and out of there. He's incredibly efficient when he does get in there and he does get the ball rolling. Alex, I thought defensively that was just the biggest red flag, right? Especially our boy Jerry screwing up things that he never really does and is not known for doing. I let out a sigh when, even on Sunday, when there were 2 outs with a runner on first, and he still threw the ball to second, the day after, when it was Justin Turner, I think, that was running down first base. And it was just it's a different thing with PCA on first, I understand, but it was a couple of those, the Geno overthrow. It was just very unusual from them, right? Yeah,
I think so. And I don't know how worried to be. And it's did they not take this seriously in spring training? I can assure you that wasn't the case. They were, you mentioned how hard that they trained in spring training in terms of their defense and how hard, fungo hitters were hitting the balls to them and what they were working on. This is a team that very, very heavily emphasizes its defense and defensive plays, defensive alignments, just what they're going to do in certain situations, and then just being crisp and picking up the baseball. That is the MO. So it was a very disappointing weekend in that sense, because we just saw some uncharacteristic mistakes in that regard. I wouldn't be too worried about it yet. If it continues, beyond this first series, maybe you start getting there. Last year, we saw some defensive mistakes cost them in the first couple weeks of the season, notably in that Atlanta series. And then you took a look at the season as a whole, and it's like, oh man, they lost that one game in Atlanta because they couldn't pick up the ball here, and because they screwed this thing up. And that's not overly helpful to look back at like right now in terms of like, that might cost them the playoffs game because, they made a mistake here. But, when you look at the season as a whole and those things add up, you can't afford to have those things add up. So that's got to stay in the first series. It was a little bit odd to watch them play defense the way that they were. And even like the Jake McCarthy play on opening day, right, where he did the hard part of getting to the ball, but then it's just like getting there and squeezing it. It's one of those where this defense is expected to make the extra play because that's kind of the standard that they've set for themselves. And he wasn't able to come away with it. So yeah, we'll see how it goes forward. Obviously, the big question is going to be Josh Naylor at first base. He looked good there in spring training. He did not pick a ball from Perdomo in this series, which was not a great start for him. He made a couple of decent plays with the glove, but then there were some miscues with the throwback to the pitcher covering the bag. Not entirely his fault, but just some plays that we're not used to them kind of screwing up. So yeah, it was a little bit disappointing from that perspective, but at the same time, it's one series, so we'll just have to see if this becomes a trend or if it's just a blip, and they'll be able to overcome it. So, but with that, the Diamondbacks finish off 2-2 against the Cubs, and they have 6 games on the road. They go 3 against the Yankees. They go 3 against the Nationals. Obviously, the big highlight is going to be what happens with Corbin Burnes at Yankee Stadium. Again, you mentioned the torpedo bats, which has become a huge topic of discussion throughout baseball. Essentially, the end of the bat is skinnier and there's more wood where you want to hit the ball on the barrel. And with that, a lot of guys have had success with it. I mean, I thought I saw Dansby Swanson swinging one of those bats against the Diamondbacks over the weekend, and he ended up hitting a home run. So that's a topic that's going to just gain more steam and more headlines. And so we'll see what entirely that looks like against the Diamondbacks this weekend. So, it's an interesting series, right? Because the Yankees obviously led all of baseball. They were scoring 12 runs a game in their first 3 games of the season against the Brewers. The Diamondbacks are second in runs per game right now with 6.5, which, some ups and downs for the offense. But at the end of the day, they're second in the league in runs scored through the first series of the season. So it will be a fascinating series to watch. Is there anything other than Corbin Burnes that you're particularly looking out for?
Just like on the Burnes note, I didn't think about this, Alex, but with him being the 5th starter, it's kind of awesome in a way because you match him
Burnes,
up against
Gallen,
the
Kelly.
other teams.
Yeah.
That too, and then you match him up with the other team's 5th starter, and the Yankees, of course, are going through two of their 3 premium arms right now are injured. Cole, Tommy John, Heal's going to be out a while. So
and Clark Schmidt.
Right now, the list, and who?
Clark Schmidt too. So they're piecing it together with duct tape right now. They have Will Warren and Carlos Carrasco are both pitching in the series against the Diamondbacks, and the D-backs are going to have Burnes, Gallen, and Kelly. And so from a pitching perspective, you're right. That's going to be advantage Diamondbacks and see how they take advantage of that.
Yeah, Will Warren is the guy listed for tomorrow. He's got 6 career appearances. They were all last year. He gave up 26 earned runs in 22 innings. So that's not quite Corbin Burnes numbers, to say the least. I'm looking forward to that. It's always fun to see Jazz. There's the fun, like, what if there of the Gallen trade. That's probably one of the more fun trades that the Diamondbacks have made in the last couple of years, just to kind of like look back on. I'm not saying it's the type of thing where the Diamondbacks would take it back, or obviously like the Marlins would like it back with how Zach's been pitching and how Jazz worked out for them. But he's had a good start with the torpedo bats. I believe it was 3 homers for him over the weekend. They're a completely sort of new look team. They're kind of doing like a version of the New York Knicks in the 2010s, where they are just grabbing potentially washed stars in their like past their MVP years and just looking to see if there's something there. I think like Cody Bellinger's
Goldschmidt versus the Diamondbacks, but with Goldschmidt as the Yankee versus the Diamondbacks for the first time.
Yeah, it's going to be very weird to see. Bellinger, I think, had 2 with the bat. Goldschmidt, apparently, I was shocked in passing story to read that Goldschmidt's using the bats because like he's a very meticulous, tinker heavy kind of guy. But he had one with it as well. And then, of course, like just like the middle of the lineup and sort of what they present. Soto gone, but they've still got like a ton of pop as they showed over the weekend to make up for all the pitching stuff that they're going through right now.
Mm-hmm. I didn't even think about this. The Diamondbacks are going to be facing Luke Weaver and Paul Goldschmidt on the same team for the first time I don't know. Yeah, there we go. When worlds collide kind of deal. They just faced Carson Kelly who was with the Cubs. So there you go.
Where's Andy Young at?
Where's Andy? Actually, I don't know where Andy Young is at.
Is he on the Nats? Can we get him on the Nats for just a week?
I think he was on the Nats. I'm not entirely sure where Andy Young is. I guess that's some homework I'll have to do for after this. We'll leave it with this. The Cubs had a 97% chance with like the win probability to win that game. And the Diamondbacks, despite not playing their best baseball all weekend, kind of showed the resilience that we saw from the team throughout much of last season and the year before. And I think, from some of the frustration that we talked about with how the first weekend went, that is probably the main takeaway in terms of, okay, that's a good way to leave this off. Let's see where they can build up from there. And one final note that I wanted to throw up because I thought it was fun. Today is the anniversary of the Diamondbacks' first ever game where they played against the Colorado Rockies. Did not go particularly well. They lost 9-2. But looking at this lineup, I figured I would read it off just because it's the anniversary of the first ever game. Goes Devon White, Jay Bell, Travis Lee, Matt Williams, Brent Brady, Kareem Garcia, Jorge Fabregas, Edwin Diaz, and Andy Benez. That's the first ever starting lineup on this day in 1998 when the Diamondbacks took on the Colorado Rockies. Looks quite different from the 1999 lineup when you put Luis Gonzalez and Steve Finley in there with Randy Johnson on the mound. But just figured I'd end with that one. But yes, Diamondbacks baseball returns on Tuesday. They take on the New York Yankees, 3 games. Then they play the Nationals before they come back home. Kellan Olson, thank you very much for joining. Listen to Arizona Sports at Night, which is returning tonight with no local games on, I believe, and also all of his stuff about the Suns. So, Kellan, thank you so much for joining. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. Diamondbacks Baseball will be back on Arizona Sports. Keep it locked in.